We're talking episode 4, season 2 of Doom Patrol, where we see our crew trying to fix Danny Street after Dorothy broke it, and with that comes some familiar faces. We also get a sex demon. Yeah, that's right, a sex demon. We're talking about that and much more. Season 2, Episode 4 of Doom Patrol was titled Sex Patrol. When the Dannyzens throw a massive party at the Doom Manor to resuscitate Danny the Brick, Dorothy longs to join the festivities and experience life as a grown-up. As the party rages on, Rita asks Flex to help unleash her full potential, which has some dangerously racy consequences. Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with my weekly recap, breakdown, review, spoiler discussion of the latest episode of Season 2, Doom Patrol. We're talking Episode 4, Sex Patrol. Very excited to break it all down with you all. So if you haven't seen the latest episode of Doom Patrol, Season 2, Episode 4, go check it out. Come back and join the conversation. But if you've seen the latest episode, let's break it all down. But before we get into it, as you can see on the screen now, make sure you're following me on all my social media accounts. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my new content. Give this video a thumbs up, helps out the channel tremendously, but I also really appreciate it. And last but not least, let me know in the comments what you all thought about this latest episode. Some of your favorite moments, your least favorite moments. Who is our main villain? Let me do some questions that I have for you all. I'm going to pose those towards the end of this video, but let me know what you all thought about this episode and what do you hope to see in next week's episode 5. So again, spoiler discussion. Quick little plugs before I even dive into it. A couple things coming to the channel pretty soon. So I will be watching Warrior Nun on Netflix after I'm done reviewing this. So expect a review for that sometime probably tomorrow. But also speaking of tomorrow, my next watch along for the horror fans out there will be for Midsummer, which will be celebrating its 1-year anniversary. So myself and a bunch of other great people will be on my channel doing a live stream watch along for Midsummer. That's 7 p.m. July 3rd. Hope you all can tune in. And then as far as the weekend goes, I will be doing another live stream, and this will be a live discussion for my dark fans out there. So myself and some other travelers will be talking about the season finale, the season as a whole, our favorite moments. This is going to be a discussion, a fun discussion. So if you have seen Dark all the way up to season 3, tune in this Sunday, July 5th at 5 p.m. to join the conversation. So those are some things to look forward to, and of course I'm going to have more movie reviews, series reviews on this channel, but keep an eye out for all that content. So with that being out of the way, we're talking Sex Patrol Episode 4. This is a okay episode. I struggle to call this episode a filler episode. Now, I know in the TV community, whenever the word filler episode gets thrown around, it has like a bad taste for some people. I look at the word filler episode for some shows as like the same way I look at fan service for movies, where, you know, filler episodes, you get some character development, but you don't get like the through line to the season kind of takes a bit of a halt, and it's kind of like a one-off type of episode, which I kind of get those inklings within this episode. But there are some moments that can indicate future episodes, and particularly with Dorothy. I think Dorothy was the most important character within this episode because we see that battle between the candle maker and Dorothy and her other imaginary friends, and see the back and forth that she has. So I think that she was the character that we focused on the most in regards to our main narrative, and maybe this is really pointing towards that Candlemaker being the main villain of this season, which I'm still kind of confused on who our main arch nemesis will be in this season. We haven't heard from Mr. Nobody. You know, we had kind of the one-off with the red, you know, Jack the Ripper character and Mr. Time. I think he'll come back in the future. The Bureau of Normancy is still out there. So I'm still confused on who our main arch nemesis will be, but I think it will be Dorothy and that Candlemaker. But as I digress, let's kind of break down the episode, talk about it, some of the moments I liked and didn't like, and get all into it. So let's break it down. So first and foremost, we see the episode does kick off with Niles, Dorothy, Rita, and Larry trying to piece together Danny Street. Now, we know last week Danny was destroyed accidentally when Dorothy was playing hide and go seek with her imaginary friends. So in fixing Danny, we get we get a call for help, and that's where we get our Dannyzens, and we get some familiar faces that we've seen from previous, last season. And particularly, we got the agent that worked for the Bureau who now lives on Danny Street, who kind of is a main person of that street. And we also get the return of Flex, which, let me know what you all thought about Flex. I think he's a fun character. I can't take him too seriously. It was a sad moment with Dolores last season, but we really didn't spend that much time with Dolores, so I felt bad for him, but at the same time, I didn't get all that emotional feels for when she passed away last season. But let me know what you all think about Flex, if he's one of your favorite characters. Do you want to see more of him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. So immediately, that's like the first 5 or 7 minutes, the introduction to Danny Street and the Dannyzens coming back and throwing a party. But I'm like, where in the hell is Cyborg? Where is my two favorite characters, Jane and Cliff? But we get to them pretty quickly. So as we eventually inevitably get to those other characters, we finally catch up to Jane, where we see she's in the underground. She's talking to Hammerhead, and they're still trying to iron out the whole ultimatum they gave her last week regarding stick with your friends or someone else. In particular, we didn't get any more of Miranda, but they want to have someone else leading the, protecting Kay and being the main person of her body. So we get all that kind of indicated within the first couple minutes. And then we also see, while they're having that conversation, the person that's controlling the position is like a Frida-like painter who's interacting with Cliff. So interesting moments there. Again, we don't get as much underground and get as much as, like I said, I think Dorothy is the only character that got like a through line throughout this episode and got a continuation of what we got from previous episodes. Everyone else was just kind of like there and kind of in the background, and didn't really get a continuation of Cliff's story, Cyborg, and Larry. We'll talk about all that in a bit here, but as we kind of go down the list here, we see Dorothy having a moment with Flex and him helping her with the disco ball, and hear more about, again, I thought Dorothy was the most focused character this episode in regards to the story being focused on her. We hear more about her feelings of being isolated and what that can do to her. And then with that isolation and kind of the uncertainty of if she can trust people, if people really like her, that's when the candle maker kind of comes into the mix and really gets into her head. And she even mentions in this episode, you're talking a little bit more than usual. Why is that? And he didn't indicate why, but I'm thinking there's something else there. There's someone that tapped into Dorothy's head. Maybe it's Mr. Nobody in the background, because we all know he can manipulate people. He's in that painting that was sold to that magician who is like a doctor or like a Constantine type of character, but there's something else there with that candle maker in regards to why he's talking so much, as Dorothy indicates. But we get all that there. We see another moment of, acceptance for Dorothy. We see her and Rita having a moment with the makeup and all that stuff, and that was cute and fun. And we get the moments where she's singing, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you all. The first like 15-20 minutes of this episode, I'm just kind of like, okay, this is kind of a kiddie, kind of feel-good show. I knew things weren't going to last that long. I knew some stuff was going to hit the fan, but the first like 15-20 minutes, I'll be honest, I was kind of bored. It felt like a Disney movie at first. Again, I love Danny Street and the acceptance of the characters and having the conversation about accepting others, loving others, but it just felt kind of dry and dull. And I know Karen, who's a big part of this community, said that she wasn't looking forward to this episode because there was some characters she wasn't a fan of. And I kind of know what she means now. Again, I love Danny Street and the characters that come with that, but sometimes it just kind of it just kind of brings down the momentum of our main characters that I love. But, like I said, the first 15-20 minutes, I wasn't completely on board, but things definitely kind of pick up once we get into, further into the episode. So all this stuff kind of goes down, but we get some interesting moments seeing Rita and Larry kind of dancing. And again, they don't really get that much story within this episode, and particularly Larry, he did nothing this episode besides dance, make a sandwich for Cyborg. I mean, literally no background, no character development at all for Larry in this episode. But we see them dancing, and I thought that Rita, for a second there, I thought that Rita was maybe gonna flirt with Flex, and that was gonna be like some love interest, and who knows. But it was more or less Rita wanted to kind of get some trainings from Flex because he obviously has control over his powers, and she wanted to kind of get some some insight from that, and to free her mind. And Rita wants Flex to kind of do what he did last season. I think it was the season finale of the second to last episode, where he flexed and got into their special spot to get them to free themselves, having an orgasm. So we kind of see that all play out, which I thought was kind of funny. And she needs that mental block being broke out, and within those moments, I guess I'll say Rita was another character, got a little bit more backstory. I'm still kind of confused on what her mother did, if she was sleeping around with people in town, if that was something that Rita wasn't a fan of, and that was something that happened on a regular basis. Let me know what you all thought about that whole backstory and that flashback with Rita and her mom and her sleeping with that guy, and what that kind of means for Rita, how she looked at her mom, how she looked at her as a woman, as a girl growing up. Let me know your thoughts on all of that stuff that played played out. Then transitioning to my conversation about Dorothy being the main focus in this episode, we see her in the bed and seeing the candle maker telling her to break the rules, to go down to the party, which Niles was very not a fan of, wanted her to go to bed, which again, Niles was kind of in the background and kind of just popping in and out, not much with the whole immortality and him dying. That wasn't even brought up at all this episode. But we see all that. We get a little bit of Cyborg in this episode. We see that he's back in town after his visit to Detroit and having that little thing, that fling with Ronnie, which I imagine will pop back up sooner rather than later. But we see, the stuff with Cyborg, as I had mentioned in my season 1 review, one of the biggest criticisms I had with the first season was characters like Rita, Larry, and Cyborg were definitely kind of secondary characters compared to Mr. Nobody, Niles, obviously Cliff and Jane. So I'm hoping that we get more of Cyborg, and this whole thing about makes the character so interesting is his battle with being a human and also battling him being a cyborg and being a machine. So I kind of like that, but I hope that we dive deeper into that. And what's going on with his dad? We haven't seen him in 4 episodes. So a little bit of Cyborg, but want a little bit more there. It's definitely kind of a weaker spot in the season thus far. But this is where the episode gets to the crazy levels that I love about this show. This show has the most absurd characters, storylines, just crazy stuff goes down. So we get the Sex Men group, which is AKA the Ghostbusters, more or less. We see that they come to the party because they've kind of, with Rita and Flex, they kind of summon this kind of demon, or the demon god or demon creature hears Rita orgasming and kind of goes to the house, and I think his name was Shadowy Mr. Evans, and that's where we see the sex ghost, and we basically get the sex demon. Essentially, his whole thing is if there's enough people having sex that he can conjure a child, and that child would wipe out all the children on Earth. And when that happened, that's where we see Hammerhead and Jane's character. They kind of have a call to action because they're obviously trying to protect Kay, who's still a kid to their eyes. They want to protect the child. So that was kind of her motivation this episode. So we see the most interesting visuals I've seen on any superhero show. We see this sex demon conjuring up and impregnating, there's impregnated and they have this child. That whole imagery was so wild, so bonkers. I was laughing my ass off hearing Larry telling Cliff to go in there because he can't get an orgasm. And, Cliff this episode, again, he didn't really get that much character development. He was just high on ecstasy this episode, but he's like, hell no, I'm not going over there and touching the demon. We see all that play out, but visually speaking, that was just so, that's what I love about the show. When it goes crazy, when it goes bonkers, I love all that stuff. So we see the sex demon trying to have this child. It gives birth. We see Hammerhead come in and save the day, stuff the child back into the demon. It goes away, kind of a villain of the week that we've gotten, that we've seen quite a few times in this show so far. But we see Hammerhead saves the day by doing that. But again, that was wild. Again, I love when the show gets crazy and absurd. And that sex demon, Mr. Shadowy Evans, that was just bananas. I don't know if it's dead, if it's just went back to its temple or wherever it was, but I just thought that was the best part of the episode, bar none. But either way, we wrap up the episode. We see they wrap up the party. Danny Street and the Dannyzens go back and they go on the road and they're going to spread more love. And like I said, that's the stuff I love about Danny. It's just the message of Danny. It's about acceptance. It's about loving people. And I love that stuff. It just gets a little boring sometimes. We get singing and musicals and all that stuff, which the show, again, I love the absurdity and the craziness and the fun that the show has, but some of that stuff is just a little dull to me at times. But we see, I imagine Danny will be back at some point in this season, and Flex will be back, and we'll see what happens with Danny. But we see that they send them off, but then the final moments we see, Rita's kind of drunk and tired, and Dorothy asks her, did you really mean it when you called me beautiful earlier? And Danny, or Dorothy says, or Rita, I should say, says, you should focus on your other goals, as her mom told her when she was a kid, and that kind of put her in a certain spot. So I think this episode really does show that Dorothy is definitely battling with the candle maker. We see that at one point she had the knife and was gonna, I don't know if she was gonna break Danny again or hurt herself or hurt other people at the parties. I was kind of confused by that scene. Let me know what you all thought of that moment when she got the little ice pick of the little knife at the party. But Dorothy was by far the most character driven in this episode. episode. You know, things that we learned about this episode again was Dorothy's isolation, how that makes her feel in this inner battle that she's having with herself and the Candlemaker. And again, I think the Candlemaker will be like the biggest, like the big bad of this season. And we'll, you know, we saw him, you know, when Niles was back in the 1900s at the circus, so we see what it visually looks like. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact it has on the future episodes. Again, the rest of our characters, we don't get much about Niles at all regarding his death, him dying, him having immortality, the continuum serum from Mr. Time. So we didn't get any of that stuff with Niles. Cliff dealing with his daughter, he talked about it, got high. Didn't really get into that much. Like I said, Larry had nothing to do with this episode besides dancing and making grilled cheese sandwiches. Rita, the mental block with her mom sleeping with the men. We got a little bit of that. Jane still battling with who's going to be in control, the ultimatum that was given to her and protecting Kay, and we didn't get any of Miranda, so we'll be interested to see what happens there. And again, like I said, the biggest thing for me is, who is our big villain this season? Is it the Candlemaker? Is it going to be Mr. Time? Is it going to be Mr. Nobody? Is it going to be, you know, the sex demon coming back up? We don't have like a true villain this season unless it is Dorothy, which I think it is at this point. But let me know what you all thought of this episode. Again, I thought the episode was fine. It just wasn't my favorite, I'll say. It wasn't terrible by any means. I don't think the show has had a terrible show yet or episode. It's just moments that I'm just not a big fan of. I find it to be a little dull. And again, like I said, I found this to be a filler episode, not to the extent of it being a bad and just a waste of an episode, but just wasn't really much there in regards to pushing the narrative forward except for the Dorothy character. So let me know what you all thought about the episode, your pros, your cons, what you're hoping to see next week. Like I said up top, watch along tomorrow at Friday, July 3rd at 7 p.m. Central Time for Midsummer. A series discussion, a live discussion this Sunday, July 5th at 5 p.m. to talk about Dark. And then, of course, I'm going to be talking about other movies and TV shows. And also on my friend's channel, Flex Talk, we'll be doing our Sunday recap of the movie news and TV news this Sunday at, 12 p.m. Central Time. So keep an eye out for all that content. Thank you all for watching this review. Many more things coming in the next few days. Hope you all are staying safe once again. Thank you for watching this review, and we'll see you soon.